Have you ever stopped to think, when someone is seriously ill, who is truly suffering? Today, we're diving into a spiritual perspective that completely flips that question on its head. We're going to look at this really challenging idea that a loved one's illness might not be about them at all, but instead it could be a deep hidden lesson for their entire family. Okay, let's jump right in. And I've got to warn you, this first idea, it really challenges our most fundamental ideas about pain and compassion. So just think about this for a moment. Right away, our gut tells us, of course, it's the person in the bed. Our hearts just naturally go out to them. But the framework we're exploring today suggests we might be looking at this from a completely different angle. Wow. Let that sink in for a minute. The source material claims that the person in that state, or maybe with severe dementia, is actually at peace. The real pain, the genuine suffering, is what's felt by the family members who have to watch it happen day in and day out. And this is where the perspective really flips. The illness isn't just some random, terrible thing that happened. It's seen as a purposeful event. It's a message that's being delivered through the patient, and it's designed to make the family suffer, reflect, and ultimately learn something absolutely crucial about themselves. So if it's a message, what's it trying to say? Let's break down this whole concept of a family lesson, or as the source calls it, the family study. The source uses this Korean term, jibanui gongbu, which basically translates to the family's study. It frames a hardship not as just meaningless pain, but as a curriculum. It's like a karmic class the whole family has to take, a kind of bowl or punishment that forces everyone to face the things they've done wrong or ignored. And get this, the stakes are super high. This isn't just some friendly suggestion for self-improvement, it's a critical warning. The idea here is that if the family fails to learn the lesson, if they keep bickering or just ignore the message, an even greater tragedy could be right around the corner. Okay, but it gets even more detailed. This framework doesn't just lump all hardships together. Nope, it actually splits them into two totally different categories of punishment. So on one hand, you've got chanbyul, or heavenly punishment. This one's for the whole family. The source uses dementia as a big example here, probably because it's a long process that affects everyone. On the other hand, you have jibyul, or earthly punishment, which is way more targeted at specific people, like what happens after a sudden event, say a car accident. So you've got this family-wide lesson versus a more personal one. Let's take a closer look at that heavenly punishment, using dementia as the example. According to the source, there's actually a clock on this. The family gets like a standard 3 years to figure it out, to learn their lesson and come together. But, and this is a big but, if they just keep fighting about who's going to be the caregiver and they don't do any reflecting, that study period can get stretched all the way to 7 years. All right, so that's the heavenly kind. But what about the earthly one? This is where it gets almost like a formula. The source lays out this really fascinating, almost mathematical way the lesson gets handed out after something like a car crash. So who do you think gets the biggest piece of that lesson? You'd probably guess the closest relative, right? A spouse, a child. But nope, that's not how it works. It's all about emotional attachment and how fast you act. It's actually kind of wild. The person who drops everything and rushes to the hospital first, the one who's most attached, boom. They get 100% of the lesson. The next person to show up, 90%. The third gets 80%. You see the pattern here, right? It just keeps going down the line. Your share of this study is literally tied to your immediate reaction. And on the flip side, what about that distant cousin who's traveling and has no idea what happened for weeks? Well, according to this perspective, they've got zero connection to the lesson. It's just not for them. This whole study is only assigned to the people who are right there, emotionally tangled up in the whole thing. So we've been talking a lot about the family's role, but what about the patient? Are they just a passive player in this spiritual drama? Not at all. They've got their own part to play, their own work to do too. It's really a team effort, a shared responsibility. The source actually breaks it down by the numbers. 60% of the lesson, that's on the family in their actions. But the patient themselves, they're holding the other 40%. So they both have to participate to solve this thing. So how do you graduate from this study? Well, both sides have homework. The patient, even in their condition, needs to reflect on their own life and what brought them there. And at the same time, the family has to look at their shortcomings and learn their lesson. Even just the act of visiting the hospital becomes an active part of the work, not just a social visit. And the idea is only when both sides do their part can the situation finally be resolved and the family can move on, hopefully avoiding something even worse down the road. And that really leaves us with a pretty powerful question to chew on, doesn't it? It asks us to look back at the toughest times in our own lives. When something difficult happens, especially with family, is it just bad luck? A random tragedy we have to suffer through? Or could it be something else? A really tough, really painful lesson that's just waiting for us to understand it.